Hey guys, I know I haven't uploaded a video in a couple of days or in a little bit, so we're going to get started where we left off. I know I kind of rushed through this slide, so I'm going to go back through this slide and then we'll continue on. Hope everyone's doing well, and I'm going to be trying to post some of these every day, and then we're going to get together on Zoom and talk about what's going on with the AP exam, and I will put that on Google Classroom. So with this, we were talking about intensive subsistence agriculture with rice dominant, mostly found in Southeast Asia, East India, and Southeast China. This is a very labor-intensive production of rice, and it's the most important source of food in Asia. Majority of the cuisine and food types and cultural food practices that they have revolve around the production of rice. This form of agriculture is practiced by the largest percentage of the world's people. We also need to realize where these places are, and they're the two countries that have more than 1 billion people in their population. This type of agriculture is grown on flat or terraced land. We'll get to terraced land or terraced farming in a second. And then we see a lot of this happening in winter areas as well in like South China and Taiwan. Let's see. All right. So with this is where we see a lot of rice production. Now, this was looking at it. If we notice, let me get my little pointer here. This is in million metric tons, okay? So that's a very large number. And the darker the purple, the more rice production that we see. So we clearly see our dark purples right here in the southern and eastern Asia area. But we also have a couple darker areas, like obviously the United States and Brazil. So those are two other places. And then we see a lot of darker places in the Southeast Asian area, okay? So this is kind of what we see, or what you're going to see with not only one, wet rice farming, but then we kind of see a modified version of terraced farming where they're cutting the hills flat and cutting into the hills and planting the rice to make use of the available land area. Intertillage, all right, this is the next thing that we're going to talk about. I know a lot of y'all have seen a lot of this stuff with the assignment that I gave you, so this is going to be a little bit of review. But intertillage is the clearing of rows in the field through the use of hoes, rakes, and other manual equipment. Okay, so what this does is it spreads food production over the farming season. It reduces loss from disease or pest or drought, so it's really efficient to make sure to capitalize on the use of the land to prevent any type of those things, so disease, pest, or drought. It helps control soil erosion and soil depletion. Hill planted crops have deeper root systems with tall stalks, while flat earth crops are spreaders. So this kind of helps you understand with this image right here where you're going to be planting things. So if it has a taller stalk or a deeper root system, you're going to be going onto the hill, and then flat earth crops are going to be shorter to the ground, and then smaller root systems for them to be able to spread a little easy. You don't have really expensive fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, or machines that are extremely necessary. It's making sure that they can make use of the time that they have. All right. So continuing on with where is agriculture distributed, we've got agriculture in developed regions. So we just finished developing regions, and now we're going to look at developed regions. So those developed types, once again, are mixed crop and livestock farming, dairy farming, commercial gardening and fruit farming, grain farming, Mediterranean agriculture, and livestock ranching. And a lot of those you all will actually be familiar with because the United States participates in a very large amount of those. So agribusiness is a vocab word that we see, and it is commonly used to refer to those types of farming listed, so the ones listed above right here. Because the family farm is not an isolated activity, but it is integrated into a large food production industry. So basically what that means is when you're in part of agribusiness, you're not only just farming for your family anymore, you're farming for corporations, you're farming for business, you're farming for profit. Okay, so it's extended past the creation or the production of agriculture and food for just your family. So with agribusiness, the industrialization of agriculture, they've kind of coined that phrase. You've got modern commercial farming is very dependent on inputs of chemical fertilizer, pesticides, and herbicides in order to ensure a maximum crop yield and ensure that you don't have disease or famine or anything like that. Oil is required to make fertilizer and pesticides, and it's going to take about 10 calories of energy to create 1 calorie of food in modern agriculture. Small farmers can't buy the needed equipment and supplies, so they're not necessarily going to profit as much from agribusiness. And also with small farmers, they're going to capitalize and focus their attention on one thing rather than your larger farms that we see going down the road. If we're going down the parkway, those are a lot of larger farms, and those people are capitalizing on the ability to market a bunch of different types of crops. Small farmers are only going to focus on one type, and they're not going to be able to have the equipment to ensure the success of a large farm. Fewer than 2% of the U.S. population works in agriculture now, and that number used to be a lot higher. But now land is harder to come by due to urban sprawl. So looking at these different types themselves, the first one is mixed crop and livestock farming. The most distinctive characteristic is the integration of crops and livestock together. Most of the crops are fed to the animals instead of humans, so using the crops that they produce in order to ensure the success of their livestock. A typical example devotes nearly all land area to growing crops, but derives more than 3/4 of its income from the sales of the animal products. So, with these types of farming, you're going to see the production and the profit that you're going to get to that farm from the animal products or the animal itself, not from the crops that they're growing. So they're only going to, not necessarily only, but a large majority of the crops that they produce are going to go into the livestock that they are going to be selling. This permits farmers to distribute the workload more evenly throughout the year, and because crops require less attention, aside from planting and harvesting them, obviously it's going to take more time and effort and even money to continuously work on livestock rather than just crops. So this helps you kind of distribute, even if you have employees, distribute your workload so that way people have different jobs and they're not overrun by just working with the livestock. This also typically involves crop rotation, which you already know crop rotation. We've talked about it. It's the practice of rotating the use of different fields from crop to crop each year to avoid exhausting the soil and draining it of those nutrients that it needs. So where you're going to see this is Ohio, the state of Ohio, to the Dakotas, North and South Dakota. A lot of this is going to be centered on Iowa in the United States. On places that are not in the U.S., you're going to see a lot of Europe doing a lot of this, from France to Russia, so from western to eastern. The crops that you're going to be seeing them produce is going to most commonly be corn and soybeans, and in the United States, 80% of the product is going to be fed to pigs and cattle. The bottom says highly inefficient use of natural resources. This is going to be talking about what it takes to feed or keep up with. So pounds of grain it takes to make 1 pound of beef, 10. So it makes 10 pounds or needs 10 pounds of grain to make 1 pound of beef. You're going to need 25 gallons of water to make up 1 pound of wheat, and 2,500 gallons of water to make up 1 pound of beef. So that's a whole lot of resources that you're using to put into a small output. So this is kind of like what you're going to see with commercial farming, okay? We're going to see the larger technology, the larger farming uses. I mean, obviously we've got our very large pieces of equipment here too. So agriculture in developed regions. Dairy farming. We're continuing on with developed regions and dairy farming is the next one. Most important type of agriculture this one is the most important, Lord, I can't talk, type of commercial agriculture in the first ring outside of large cities because of transportation factors. Dairy farming, milk, it goes bad. This is talking about the ring surrounding a city from which milk can be supplied. This is known as the milk shed. These advancements in modes of transportation have increased the radius of milk sheds to about 300 miles. So the ability it's going to be like a ring. If we think about our nodal regions, we've got those inner rings. So that smallest ring on the inside is going to be your city center. And what they're talking about, the ring surrounding that center node, that's going to be where you're going to see your dairy farming, okay? Because of the fact that they have to have access, because of the fact that milk goes bad, has to stay cold. You're going to find a lot of this in the northeastern United States, because that's where a lot of your major metropolitan cities are concentrated, and then diffuse or distribute it from there. Southeast Canada and Northwest Europe. This process, you've got dairy farmers that are typically selling their milk to wholesalers who later distribute it to retailers. So like I just said, retailers then sell it to consumers in shops or at home. So like I said, the darker that you have is where your milk production is going to come. We see that really dark right here is really only found right here in South Asia. But then we've got a bunch of different places that are this next step that are producing their own milk in those areas. This is the last one I'll probably get to in this video, but this is commercial gardening and fruit farming. This is a predominant type of farming in southeastern United States, and it's mostly referred to as truck farming, meaning like bartering or exchange of commodities. So it's basically selling out of a truck. A lot of people that are going to be doing this type of gardening and fruit farming is going to grow many of the following fruits and vegetables, such as apples, asparagus, cherries, lettuce, mushrooms, and potatoes. So a lot of these things are going to be sold fresh to consumers, but most are sold to large processors for canning or freezing. Truck farms are highly efficient, large-scale operations that take full advantage of machines at all stages of the growing process. You're not going to really have a whole lot of labor costs because you're going to hire migrant farm workers and people that can be paid for lower wages. And specialization in few crops is common. So you're going to have peach farmers, you're going to have people that specialize in certain things. And only selling certain things, so like orchards and stuff like that. All right. A lot of these places, like I just said, where you're going to have this is going to be the U.S. Southeast, New England, and near a bunch of the cities around the world. The crops create high-profit vegetables and fruits that are demanded by the wealthy and urban populations. Like I said, those types of crops are apples, asparagus, cherries, lettuce, tomatoes, etc. And they're going to be distributed and situated near urban markets. Okay. We're going to stop right here. I don't want to get into another one and feel like I'm going to be rushed. So make sure that you're working on all your assignments and getting all those turned in. And I will talk to you all soon. Bye.